Welcome to the videotape on how to keep your stereo Realist alive. This is an f2.8 stereo Realist. We're going to be using this camera during the tape and also a 3.5 stereo Realist. The first thing you want to do is when you're storing your stereo Realist is to store it just as you see it, without its leather case. The leather tends to collect moisture and causes pitting in the 1950s and 1940s chrome that appears on the camera. You want to always keep your camera dry and in a temperate environment, not in the trunk of your car, for instance, and away from the beach or other places where sand and grit can get into the gears. One of the advantages of the Realist is that it has fairly accessible mechanics, which is also its downfall because those accessibility ports also let in grit, sand, and dirt and can damage the gears. For long-term storage, I recommend the use of a small packet of desiccant inside the camera. You can pick that up at most photo stores, and it'll come stored in a lot of electronic items that you buy. If you'll notice, we have a nylon strap attached to this camera. When Stereo Realist first came out with these cameras, they had a leather strap on them. If you've ever known anybody whose leather strap broke, you probably know somebody with a broken stereo Realist. The first thing you want to do is get rid of the leather strap and get one of these durable nylon straps of some type. They're fairly inexpensive. When the camera is not in use, store the shutter at 1 second, put the rangefinder on infinity, and do not store it with the film advanced. What that does is decrease the tension on all of the springs of the camera. When you store a camera with the springs tensed, the springs tend to wear out a lot quicker. A lot of the cameras that were put away in the 1950s and are just coming back onto the market today have this problem. They were put away with the shutter cocked, with the rangefinder in a place other than an infinity, and with the shutter speed all the way up. To clean the exterior of the stereo Realist, I like using Q-tips. This happens to have a wooden shaft. They seem to be able to take a little more abuse than do the cardboard ones, but they're perfectly acceptable if that's all you can find. I try to use fairly mild cleaners when cleaning the exterior of a stereo Realist. Typically things like 409 or Glass Plus work well. Use whatever you find works well for you. The least abrasive and the least toxic cleaner that you can find that will clean your camera is probably the best one for you. This is a Stereo Realist 3.5. It's one of the 2-button models. As you can tell from looking down on the top, it has 2 buttons on the back as opposed to 1. This is the button that you push in order to be able to advance the film. This is the double exposure prevention button. Some of the early stereo Realists did not have this button, but the repairs and the cleaning and maintenance are virtually the same. To start cleaning the Realist, I'll take a little bit of 409 and spray it onto the tip of my Q-tip. I'll usually start with the bakelite, work my way to the chrome, and then work my way to the black leather, working all the way around the camera. If you'd like to really brighten up this bakelite, Mother's Auto Polish, which is available at most car stores, does a beautiful job. It'll shine it up almost like new. And as you can tell from the tip of that Q-tip, look at all the dirt that I've gotten off just from rubbing it very gently for about 30 seconds. It'll take me approximately 50 Q-tips and an hour to clean this entire camera the way I showed you. You do it just by going all the way around getting into all the nooks and crannies, taking your time. And it just looks a whole lot better after a while. That's already brightening up. I don't know if you can see the difference between there and there. Go ahead. When you finish cleaning a piece of the camera, I recommend you buff that piece with a soft rag or even an old diaper, if they still make those. The leather on many of these cameras has dried out after 50 years of poor storage and needs to be re-moisturized. You can tell that the leather needs this when it starts to pull away, especially from the sides of the windows and the sides of the body here. What's happening is the leather is actually shrinking. There are several products available that can help you revitalize your leather. One of them is called mink oil up here in the northeast part of the country, which is essentially a silicone that we use to put on our boots to get through the snow in the winter. I prefer Armor All on a Q-tip again, and just gently working into the leather. As you can tell, it also gives the leather a very nice sheen, and you can buff this out to a beautiful sheen. I'll use 4 to 5 applications of Armor All over a few days in order to get the moisture back into the leather, and I have been known to use both mink oil and Armor All. Cosmetic improvements on your stereo Realist can be made by utilizing silver model paint, typically sold in small bottles under the Testors brand name. Use the gloss enamel. The top of this Realist has some pitting, which you can improve by taking some of the gloss enamel and dabbing it into the pits and then wiping it off. This is a cosmetic only improvement. It doesn't affect the value or the usability of the camera. From use, the paint will chip off the back of the camera on the edges from time to time. You can use a magic marker to dull this down a little, but it doesn't last. What does last is a Testors, T-E-S-T-O-R-S product called Gloss Paint Marker, and you want to use the black gloss paint. This is very much like a magic marker, but is in fact a gloss paint. 3 or 4 applications will make that disappear, and it's very durable. To brighten up the Stereo Realist logo on the front of the camera, you can use a lacquer stick, which is a paint stick available from paint stores and Porter's Camera Store, which is a mail order dealer from the Midwest. A paint stick is nothing more than solid paint that you can rub into the logo, wipe off the excess, and it repaints the logo for you.